Oh, wow!
Do you guys remember this moment when Chris Rock made a joke at the expense of Will Smith's wife, Jada? You see, Jada has alopecia, which causes a lot of hair loss, or complete hair loss. And basically, Chris Rock compared her look with G.I. Joe, a character from G.I. Joe or something, I don't know. And as terrible as it comes off, let me hear from you guys. Do you believe that this was justified, or do you believe that Will Smith's emotions got the best of him? It is his wife, but at the end of the day, he did end up regretting it and apologizing. So let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Was it justified? Living a life constantly controlled by your emotions can be dangerous. It can be equally as dangerous to be unaware of just how much they control you. Your emotions can be quite deceptive. They make you veer towards ideas that soothe your ego. They paint your lens to see only the information or evidence that you want to see, depending on your mood, your physical state, etc. Your emotions pull you inwards when your attention is most needed outwards towards reality. As Robert Greene says, this disconnect from reality is the source of the bad decisions and the negative patterns that haunt your life. But there's a secret power we must learn to cultivate, a power that's deep within us. A secret power constantly cultivated by some of the greatest minds in history, from Roman emperor and philosopher Marcus Aurelius to billionaires like Elon Musk and Warren Buffett. This is the law of rationality, or rather the law of irrationality, depending on how you want to put it. But before we can become rational thinkers and learn how to manage our emotions, we need to understand our fundamental, natural irrationality as human beings. Our emotions are our blind spots. Emotions by themselves are not bad. It's not evil to have strong emotions, nor does it reduce your intelligence. However, to be driven by or to see the world through your ever-fluctuating emotions draws you away from reality, especially when it needs you the most. Reality itself is extremely multi-layered and complex. Yet when we see it through the lens of our emotions, we tend to oversimplify matters. When things don't go our way, we tend to oversimplify the issue and its explanation. But in looking for a cause, our minds tend to revolve around the same types of explanations. Someone or some group sabotaged me, perhaps out of dislike. Large antagonistic forces out there, such as the government or social conventions, hindered me. I received bad advice or information was kept from me. Finally, if worse comes to worst, it was all bad luck and unfortunate circumstances. Notice how these explanations generally emphasize our helplessness. They're also really vague. We usually can't point to the specific malicious actions of others, only imagine and speculate. These explanations we tell ourselves tend only to either soothe our egos or intensify our emotions. They allow us to feel bad for ourselves, stopping us from growing the thick skin we need to survive in this world. But yes, there are things in our lives that are far out of our control, things that have impacts on us and our futures, things that have huge impacts on our lives. But I love what Robert Greene says on this point. Generally, what causes us to go astray in the first place, what leads to bad decisions and miscalculations, is our deep-rooted irrationality. And as I said before, when you're irrational, you tend to oversimplify, you tend to magnify the situation that doesn't necessarily need that. And this irrationality brought about by our minds is being controlled by our emotions. When our emotions constantly cloud our view, soothe our egos, and distort our past, it becomes nearly impossible to learn from our mistakes. Distracted by our emotions, we tend to avoid looking at the root cause of our issues, at the true cause of our pain and failure. So, how are emotions even formed? The first step towards becoming rational is understanding our fundamental irrationality. There are multiple theories as to how humans developed emotions. One of the more plausible theories for me is the James Lange theory of emotion. This is a theory of emotion proposed by William James and Carl Lange in the late 1800s. This theory proposes that emotions are caused by certain physiological changes within the body. These physiological changes are caused by an unconscious response to environmental stimuli or external stimuli, or really any event outside of your body. Now, your interpretation of this physical reaction creates your emotional reaction. Now, imagine you walking through the car park at 2 a.m., pitch black, and you notice a big, tall, dark figure behind you. Your heart may begin to race. You may start sweating a bit. You may start shaking a bit. This is your physical reaction to the external stimulus. Your interpretation of this physical reaction, your heart beating, you're shaking, you're sweating, may lead you to conclude that you are frightened, that being your emotion. I hope it makes sense. Another example could be you about to go on stage in front of 20,000 people. Your heart may be shaking, your hands may be shaking. Okay, look, for some people it may be I'm gonna die, but in reality, it's more of I'm going to go in front of an audience. Maybe you're about to go on a date with someone and you're nervous and you're shaking. It's all based on your interpretation of this physical reaction within your body. James and Lang placed a huge emphasis on one's interpretation of this physical external stimuli rather than one's automatic response to it. William James actually says himself, "My thesis on the contrary is that the bodily changes follow directly the perception of the exciting fact, and that our feeling of the same changes as they occur is the emotion." So let's explore this a little bit deeper. Our emotions begin as chemical reactions and sensations within our body that we need to translate into words or logic. Without translating it, we wouldn't be able to understand it. According to neuroscience, where these emotions are picked up and processed is different in the brain from where they're translated into logic or words. This leaves us with the task of having to accurately translate our emotions. This translation is often slippery and inaccurate. For instance, we feel anger at person X, whereas in fact the true source of this may be envy. Below the level of conscious awareness, we feel inferior in relation to X and want something he or she has. As Robert Greene highlights, a feeling such as envy isn't as palatable towards our self-image or our concept of who we are. We may end up mistranslating this emotion into feelings of anger, dislike, or criticism. Possibly we may be having a bad day, leaving us feeling tired, frustrated, and on edge. Then someone manages to cross our path at the wrong time and place, and we unload our emotions unproportionately onto them because of everything we've been going through before. Or let us say that we are truly angry at person Z, but the anger sitting inside of us is caused by someone in our past who hurt us deeply. Perhaps a parent. We direct the anger at Z because they remind us of this other person. A similar situation can occur within relationships. If, for example, you've been cheated on, you may harbor a lot of feelings towards the new partner you get with that they don't deserve. In short, we often have a poor time translating our emotions into logic, language, or reasoning. In fact, we often take the interpretation of these emotions that soothe our ego and serve to reinforce our self-concept. The concept that we believe we are, the person we ideally think that we are. This makes it nearly impossible to learn from our emotions or stop negative, compulsive behavior that comes from them. In fact, the split between our emotions and its logical translation can actually cause heavy internal friction within us. Animals feel fear for a brief time, then it's gone. We dwell on our fears, intensifying them and making them last well past the moment of danger, even to the point of feeling constant anxiety. For many of us, emotions such as anger, envy, insecurity, fear linger for far too long. Our minds love to linger on these emotions way past the action that caused them. It may become all too consuming. And there's no better example of this than social media. How social media has worsened the issue. Progress and technology have not rewired us. They have merely altered the forms of our emotions and the type of irrationality that comes with them. With over 4.48 billion people regularly using social media worldwide, the internet has had a massive impact on how we live our lives, what we find cool, trendy, or even attractive. But before we get into the more harmful side of social media, I just want to preface this by saying that social media in and of itself is not bad. Humans are social creatures. We need the companionship of others in order to thrive in life. The strength of our connections play a huge part in our mental health and overall happiness. Your experience on social media is entirely dependent on how you choose to use it. If you want to know how to use social media more effectively, actually pushing you towards your goals rather than pulling you away from them, then check out this video over here. It's actually a very helpful video where we go into certain tactics, me and my friend Luigi into certain tactics on how to use social media for your benefit. Dopamine is a chemical produced in our brain that plays a huge role in determining our motivations and our subsequent behaviors. It gets released when we eat delicious food, when we have successful social interactions, when we finish exercising, etc. It rewards us for beneficial behaviors and motivates us to repeat them. When the brain produces dopamine, it moves as a message through something called a neurotransmitter neurotransmitter. Each neurotransmitter goes through one of four major dopaminergic pathways or connections. Each dopaminergic pathway has its own special role associated with a specific cognitive process. Three of these four pathways are considered to be our reward pathways, meaning the areas where dopamine is received and thus the connection between the activity we did and the pleasure we received from the dopamine is established, securing its repetition, securing that we do it again. So how does this relate with social media, your phone, the internet? Three of the four pathways that we just spoke about are your reward pathways. They have to do with your motivation and your behavior of repetition. These three pathways are also responsible for the release of dopamine to various areas of the brain. And in case you're wondering, the fourth pathway is responsible for the regulation of a hormone called prolactin, which is responsible for milk creation. So yeah, getting back to social media. When we're addicted to our cell phone, to pornography, to drugs, there's something dysfunctional with the three reward pathways in our brain. Whenever you anticipate or experience a rewarding event, these three rewarding pathways actually reinforce that activity that you've done with that pleasure, that feel-good feeling that you get after doing it. Every time a specific activity results in a reward, that connection between that activity and the reward that's been experienced becomes even stronger. So for example, you finish watching an AJ Lacau video and you just love it, you feel great, you feel motivated. Every time I drop, you're probably gonna be expecting a good feeling from it. At least I hope so. But the catch is, if you're always associating this activity that you do with pleasure and your neural pathways, your reward pathways are constantly making this association stronger, releasing more and more dopamine, it becomes harder to stop. It becomes way harder to stop. When a cocaine addict does cocaine for the first time, all the good dopaminergic feelings besides the high is just released into their brain. So then they start to associate the activity of doing drugs with feeling good. This association becomes stronger and stronger, and they'll need more and more cocaine in order to feel even more and more good to make this association even stronger, making it super difficult to stop. And plus your body becomes dependent on that substance, which isn't a very good state to be in. The same thing happens with pornography. When someone goes onto a website or an app and they see things that, make them feel good in a certain aspect, the association with this activity and the feel good feeling afterwards becomes stronger and stronger. That person will probably have to look up more hardcore material in order to get the same boost, and it'll become really difficult to stop. When you associate picking up your phone and scrolling through social media with experiencing that fun emotion of, seeing a funny meme, or maybe getting a text from your friend, or maybe, getting likes or followers, then the association between the activity and the feel-good emotions you get becomes stronger and stronger, making it even harder to stop, to put your phone down for a bit. And just so you know, these feel-good emotions can come from anything. You can go on social media and see celebrity gossip and it can make you feel good. And the association is just continued. This process is called long-term potentiation. In fact, cognitive neuroscientists have actually shown that positive social stimuli such as a like or a message from a friend or seeing a laughing face activates similar releases of dopamine in the brain as a cocaine hit. This is exactly why people within the social media industry, people within the tech space, study this process so deeply. In fact, TikTok, in my opinion, is actually one of the pioneers of this whole concept with their 60-second below videos, quick dopamine hits, and most other platforms, Instagram Reels, YouTube Shorts, have actually copied this from them. Smartphones, and by extension social media, actually provides us with a virtually unlimited amounts of social stimuli, both positive and negative. Every notification, whether a like, a DM, a text, whatever it is, has the potential to either be positive or negative social stimuli, thus possibly resulting in an influx of dopamine. Social media literally has the power to change your brain chemistry. Okay, I know to be addicted to social media is one thing, but how does social media actually affect your emotions, how you feel about yourself and others? Ironically, for a technology that's created and designed to bring people closer together, spending too much time on social media has actually been irrefutably linked with increased feelings of anxiety and depression. And one of the biggest ways social media actually affects your emotional state is through self-comparison. Self-comparison or social comparison is a form of sociological psychological self-esteem in which we judge or derive our sense of self in comparison to someone else. We build our self-concept through the comparison between us and someone else close to us, a neighbor, whoever it is. American psychologist Leon Festinger argued that people tend to make downward self-comparisons with those who are less skilled or worse off than them, acting as a superficial boost to their own self-esteem. In the same way, he argued that upward social comparison, comparing yourself with someone perceived to be living a better life than your own, can reduce self-esteem and increase insecurity. In this age of social media, with billions of people on these platforms, feelings of self-inferiority can be heightened and amplified. Ideally, self-comparison or social comparison happens between oneself and those immediately close to them, a neighbor, a friend, maybe a family member. You may look at your neighbor's car and be like, I need to work harder and get a better car. Or I need to lose weight like Michelle, my friend, or whatever it is. Self-comparison online, however, can occur between a limitless amount of people from various places and backgrounds. This may perpetuate unrealistic standards that you set for yourself. Not only are you comparing your life with that of your friend or your neighbor, but you're also comparing your body with that influencer's, your looks with theirs, how much money you make versus that forex trader or drop shipper, your relationship versus that couple online that seemingly never has any fights ever. Fundamentally, this leads to two negative behaviors. Number one, self-hate. In comparing yourself to these unrealistic standards that a lot of people on social media fake, by the way, you start to develop a hate for your own life, for your looks, for your job, for your partner, for your lifestyle, believing that inherently you are not enough, you're inadequate in some way. And only once you can attain A, B, C listed out by Andrew Tate or whatever other influencer you follow, you can be enough, you can be happy. That's not true, by the way. It's really, really not true. You are enough as you are. You are enough as you are. Rather chase these things, not to become enough, not to have value, but if you have to, chase it from a place of value. Because you know yourself, because you know who you are, you know your worth, you'll go and fight hard to get the house. You go fight hard to get the girl of your dreams. You go and fight hard to get, the guy of your dreams. You go and fight hard to get the body of your dreams. But because you come from a place of wholeness and completeness already. Number two, imitation. This occurs when we change our behaviors, appearance, morals, beliefs in order to fit in with whatever social media is finding cool or trendy at the time, fundamentally changing who we are. And this doesn't originate from a place of motivation. Maybe you see someone, an influencer, and you want to aspire to them, but from a place of wholeness and self-worth and self-value. But rather this comes from a place of self-hate and insecurity. I'm only enough if I can just be as attractive as they are, as rich as they are, as powerful as they are, as influential as they are. We tend to forget that 90% of the things online are highly exaggerated. That Instagram model with the perfect body may have just touched up their photos with Photoshop. That perfect relationship online may be on the brink of ending in real life. That super rich influencer that flexes all the money they have, watches, cars, houses, may be neck deep in debt or may be doing nefarious things to get money. And don't get me wrong, the opposite could be said. These people could just be living their life and taking photos of these things, but it's none of your concern. In fact, the act of comparing our sense of self and who we are to strangers on social media and also just overlooking the reality of things is a symptom of our fundamental irrationality. In the online world, we're constantly besieged by emotions and needless drama. From celebrity gossip to news coverage, one's emotional state can fluctuate depending on the day they choose to open their phones. So how do rational people behave versus irrational people? Rational versus irrational behaviors. The very first difference between a rational person and an irrational person is one thing: awareness. We constantly feel emotions and they continually affect our thinking, making us veer towards thoughts that please us and soothe our egos. It's impossible to not have our inclinations and feelings somehow involved in what we think. Rational people are only rational because of their awareness of their fundamental irrationality. I know it sounds confusing, but I promise you it's true. Just stay with me here. Rational people are aware of their ability to mess up. so they're constantly looking to avoid those pitfalls. Irrational people aren't aware of their irrationality, thus they keep falling into traps that they set for themselves. They keep falling into eating cycles even though they're on 10 different diets and 10 different workout plans. They keep getting into toxic relationships with the same person but with different faces. They fall into the trap into thinking so largely of themselves, manipulating themselves mentally without having any track record or any form of proof to back it up. Rational people subtract their emotions from certain situations through careful introspection and effort. Irrational people allows their emotions to paint bigger pictures of certain situations than reality shows it to be. For example, imagine you ask someone you find attractive out on a date and they say no. Your emotions will paint a huge picture. It's probably because I'm ugly, my clothes are bad, I'm whatever it is, I'm not enough, this and that, rather than looking at it from the perspective of a difference in preference or maybe an incompatibility. You choose to emphasize your insecurities. Oh, I'm fat, I'm ugly, I'm whatever it is. It's kind of like if you go through your day and you receive 9 compliments, you're gorgeous, you have a beautiful smile, but then one like really negative insults, you look, your nose is big, then you're gonna focus in on that one insult, that type of negativity bias. By the way, in part 2 of the video, we'll go through all the biases that make us fundamentally irrational, but you'll focus in on that one insult and overlook the 9 compliments. That is a fundamental irrationality right there. Rational people demonstrate over time that they're able to finish a project, reach a goal that they set for themselves, or work effectively within a team. Irrational people reveal certain negative patterns in their lives that keep repeating, mistakes that they keep making, unnecessary conflicts that seemingly follow them wherever they go, dreams and goals and projects that are just never realized, anger and desires for change that never translate into concrete action. Rational people look to make the best long-term decisions for themselves, despite any pain or setback they might face in the short term. Irrational people lust for instant gratification. Rational people delay it. Rational people look beyond an individual's appearance and into who they are, what makes them them. Irrational people will easily fall under the spell of those who are charming, who know how to feed their insecurities, or who pose little challenge or threat. And the mistakes and failure that will subsequently follow because of these choices will be blamed on anyone and everyone except the irrational person themselves, who is almost allergic to self-responsibility. Rational people can admit their own irrational tendencies and thus their need to stay vigilant about them. Irrational people feel attacked when confronted about the emotional roots of their decisions. They are incapable of introspection and learning. Their mistakes make them increasingly defensive. One of the best examples I can think of crazy irrationality, intense irrationality, is that of the incel community. So if you don't know what an incel is, incel stands for involuntary celibate. This is a person who identifies with the online subculture in which they believe that their inability to attract a partner or a mate is inherent within society itself or societal structures. Unfortunately, this community is highly male-dominated and extremely misogynistic. Some of their actual beliefs include women being stripped of their rights and being forced to serve as state-mandated girlfriends, women being genetically inferior to men, believing in strict social hierarchies with alpha males at the top, chads, beta males in the middle, normies, and incels at the bottom. An incel could actually be an incel for all sorts of reasons, but one of the funniest beliefs is that they believe that you could be an incel or you can repel mates from you because of your jaw size and shape. So that is kind of crazy to me. And also they believe in the unfairness of races, so a certain race can have way less experience with the opposite sex than another race, and so on and so forth. This type of ideology is rife with self-hate, hatred for women, and irrationality. In fact, this ideology has actually led to some of the worst cases of human violence, with Elliot Rodger, self-proclaimed kissless virgin, gunning down 7 people and injuring another 14 in an act of senseless violence back in 2014. In Toronto, Canada, Alec Manassian was convicted of murdering 10 people with a van in 2018. He hailed Elliot Rodger as one of his biggest motivations online minutes before the attack. Jake Davison, a participant on incel forums and fellow Rodger follower, murdered 5 people in Plymouth in August 2021. Irrationality becomes harmful when it leads to delusion. And I can sit here and give you hours and hours of content about how delusion has led to a lot of harm. Now, there are 2 modes or 2 levels of irrationality that one needs to understand before overcoming it. Becoming rational is not complicated. As I said before, it begins at awareness. There are 2 modes of irrationality that works within us. Only once we understand these 2 levels of irrationality can we create strategies in order to perfect our rationality. Number 1, low-grade irrationality. This is a function of the continual moods and feelings that we experience in life below the level of our consciousness. These are feelings or moods that skew our ability to make the best decisions or to plan effectively for our lives. They mess up our thinking process. They're ingrained deeply within us and distort reality, leading us to make mistakes. Only once we are aware of them can we begin to counterbalance their effects. Number 2, high-grade irrationality. This occurs when our emotions become inflamed, generally because of certain pressures. So basically, this occurs when we interpret everything through the lens of emotions that have already been intensified. Blinding emotions such as anger, envy, lust, greed, whatever it is. We become more sensitive or more prone to other emotional reactions. Impatience and resentment can bleed into anger and deep distrust. These blinding emotional states can lead people into violence, mania, or lack of self-control. For example, uncontrollable rage. I've heard people say, oh, I was just seeing red, it wasn't me. You know, it's almost like a disassociative experience. Uncontrollable greed, or the deep desire to control someone. It could be a partner, a child, a friend. This type of irrationality can originate from deep unresolved trauma, feelings of insecurity, or general inadequacy. Understanding how this type of irrationality operates can allow us to recognize the reactive state as it is happening and pull back before we do something we regret. Okay, so I know this was a really long video and I know it took me a bit of time to get this all together, but in part 2, we'll go through the 3 steps, the 3 main steps to get you started onto your road to rationality, to being a rational, straightforward thinking person, to have emotions, but also be able to control them. If you like these longer type videos, let me know down in the comments below. And if you had any value, if you got anything from this video, let me know too. Leave a like and please subscribe. I love you guys so much. Thank you for watching. Thank you for giving me your time. I do not take it lightly. God bless.